first thing that we need to do is to take off the entire top to the vault table. And you do that by using a 9/16 ratchet or wrench and take the bolts out from underneath. Should be 8 of these 9/16 bolts that hold the top on. Take all of those bolts off and set them aside, and then we take off the top and set it to the side. Alright, the next step in this is that since I have the vault table up, I have to push this middle part of the vault base all the way down, as far down as it will go, and it will expose the coil springs that are located in the center of the post. So we're going to push them down now. This is what you will see once you take off the top. You have your 4 coil springs here located on the top. Now, one of the indications that says that you have a bad coil spring is that one of these will be broken. It will be scraping or hear a scraping sound as you try to lower or raise the vault table to the different height positions. The indication is then that you need to get new coil springs for your vault table. Alright, now I take my pry bar of some sort and a pair of long needle nose pliers or regular pliers, and this is what we do to remove the axles that are in the center that connect these coil springs to the center post. I take some underneath and I pry that so that it gets this axle so it moves freely, and that allows me then to pull off this pin that locates the axle, and we will set that aside, but I pull out the axle and set those aside, and then I do that to all 4 of these springs. Once you get all the pins removed and the axles removed from the coil springs, this is what it will look like. The coils are basically in the same position, but now it's free from being connected to this center post, so we can now lift the outside of the post, the table, up and off to have access to these springs where we can replace them. Alright, now that we've got this turned upside down, you can see inside that the coils are still attached to the center post on the outside sleeve of the center post. These are buttons of plastic that allow the outside sleeve to slide up and down and stay in alignment on the inner sleeve. These will fall out, but it's not to be alarmed by that. Just stick them back in or set them aside and make sure you put them back in before you put this center post back together. What you'll also find when you lift the top off of the center post, there are these washers that are on either side of the coil spring. And once you take the axle out from the middle and lift that top off, these washers will want to fall off. Make sure that you put them in a place where you're ready to use when you put the post back together and put the new springs in. And now the next part of this is to take the springs loose from the outside sleeve that they are attached by 2 bolts with. We use a Phillips head screwdriver and a 7/16 ratchet or 7/16 wrench. Once both of the screws are loose, then you can take the old coil spring out from the center of the sleeve for the vault table. Okay, now these bolts, the short bolts, Phillips head bolts that are in here, you need to uncoil the spring a little bit so that it will pop these bolts out. Because you will use these, of course, to mount the new springs in the vault table. This center nylon roller will come out just by pushing out. The coil spring is coiled up a little tighter than the diameter of this nylon roller that goes in the center. To open it up, all you have to do is open up the diameter and uncoil the spring a little bit so that it will be big enough for this to slide in easily. To put the screws back into the new coil, it's easier when you use two people. One person pries it open and the second person puts the screw into the hole. Remember that the screws go from the inside of the coil to the outside of the coil. Remember that it's important which way that you put in the coil springs. The coil should be on the bottom of this upside down centerpiece. So it will go in just like this with the screws facing to the outside. So I'm going to put them into the hole. And then start with my acorn nuts that go on the outside and get them started. One of the critical points in putting the two pieces back together is that you align the side up correctly with the center post. This open diamond window in the outside sleeve needs to be lined up with where the height adjustment numbers are on the center post. Once you do that, then you should be lined up correctly. Now we're going to lift the post outside back onto the inside. These washers, remember, have a nylon washer that is glued to the outside of the steel washer, and there is nothing on the inside. You want to make the nylon washer be on the outside between the coil and the steel tab. So the washer goes on the outside. We'll put that there for right now. Okay, now you need to line up the washer and the center of the roller and the washer on the other side. So start from one end and slide it in, and then hopefully it will line up directly and you can slide it all the way through. And then you relieve the pressure off with your pry bar and you replace then the spring pin that goes in the end of the axle that keeps the rollers in place going up and down. Okay, now the last part of this operation then is to replace and put the top back onto the center base of the vault table. I like to get the bolts started, all of the bolts started before you tighten down any of them. This allows you to move the vault top into a position so it's in alignment with all of the bolts that are needed to attach it. Okay, now that we've completed the changing of the springs in the vault table, you need to remember that there is a certain order that you do this in. You first take off the top, then you push down the center post all the way to the bottom. That exposes the springs. Take the axles out of their position on the center post that connects the springs to the center post. Lift it out, turn it upside down. Switch out the spring coils, and I advise you to switch out all four, even if only one of them is bad. That keeps all the cycles of opening and closing the same on all four of the springs. Then it's just a matter of reversing that order, attaching the new coils to the inside, turning it back upright, and pushing it down all the way, putting the axles back into their proper position that connects the coils to the center of the post, and then replacing the top with the bolts that hold the top of the head on. That should put you back in business and have the table working the way it should be working.